Today, Apple is announcing that it will invest $600 billion, that's with a B, in the United States over the next 4 years. That's $100 billion more than they were originally going to invest. And this is the largest investment Apple has ever made in America and anywhere else. And it's just an honor to have you. As you know, Apple's been an investor in other countries a little bit. I won't say which ones, but a couple. And they're coming home.
So that was President Trump talking about Apple investing $600 billion into the United States to manufacture iPhone parts here. Now, Trump has been gunning for huge investments like this since he took office. And while, to be clear, this sounds really, really good, $600 billion in American manufacturing is an absolutely huge number, I'm not actually convinced that this is everything that it seems to be.
Apple CEO Tim Cook joined Trump at the White House to announce a new investment into American manufacturing.
Today, we're committing an additional $100 billion to the United States, bringing our total U.S. investment to $600 billion over the next 4 years.
To commemorate this, Cook did something pretty unexpected. He gifted Trump a statue made with iPhone screen glass and a 24-karat gold base. The glass comes from Corning, a US-based manufacturer that Apple will now use to create 100% of the cover screen glass for the iPhone and Apple Watch. The statue has Donald Trump's name engraved on it, along with a big Apple logo, Tim Cook's signature, and a Made in USA marker. This comes as Apple's trying to stave off threats from Trump, who has said he will impose a 25% tariff on iPhones if Apple doesn't bring production to the US. But will this new investment in a fancy glass statue really change Trump's mind?
So these are the two big concerns about this investment announcement. The first being that Apple is basically just doing this to appease Trump. And if they get a little good PR on the side, then nobody's going to be upset about that. But the second concern is that Trump actually might not ease the tariffs at all, which would just mean that iPhones are getting more expensive. See, iPhones are currently made in China. Labor and parts are just cheaper over there. And so the iPhone, for what it is actually relatively inexpensive. And I know what you're thinking. The iPhone is like $1,000 to $2,000. And that is true. But for what it is, which is essentially a magic miracle box that does more things than most humans could have conceived of 50 years ago, it's actually surprisingly affordable. However, Trump's threats would make it super expensive. It would be expensive to import. It would be expensive to sell. And Apple would lose tons of customers in the United States. The idea here is that it becomes so expensive to import that Apple is forced to do some manufacturing here in the US. And so Apple is clearly conceding some points here in hopes that they can get these tariffs lifted. Trump's original plan was to put tariffs on iPhones or all the iPhone pieces that are brought into the United States, which would be devastating. So presumably Apple is just trying to give them a little bit of room here and say, well, don't do the whole iPhone. We'll make the glass parts of it here so that you can say you're bringing back American manufacture. And my guess is that the glass that they're making is somehow the cheapest part or maybe the easiest to manufacture in the United States. And that's why they're bringing that specifically back here. Apple is basically conceding a little bit, a small loss, in hopes that the tariffs will stay low and they'll continue to be able to import their iPhone, or at least pieces of their iPhone, without the 100% tariffs that Trump had originally threatened. They make most of their money off of the iPhone, and so losing that would be absolutely devastating.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. President, thank you very much for having me here today. You've been a great advocate for American innovation and manufacturing, and I'm grateful for your leadership and your commitment. That's a commitment we share at Apple because American innovation is central to everything we do. Our products are designed here, we're hiring and growing here, and we support 450,000 jobs with thousands of suppliers and partners in all 50 states. Earlier this year, we made our largest ever spending commitment, $500 billion to the U.S. over the next 4 years. That's already yielding results. Earlier this year, we broke ground on a new factory in Houston to make advanced AI servers. And just last month, the very first test unit rolled off that factory's line, proudly made in America.
Now, the language he's using here is very deliberate. He's saying things are designed in America. They're not necessarily built or assembled here. He's saying that they support 450,000 jobs across all 50 states, which is an interesting word to use, support, because Apple doesn't employ that many people. They employ about 164,000 worldwide. He also says that it's already yielding results, but that $600 billion that he's talking about was mostly committed years ago. I want you to look at these headlines. This first one is from July 17th of 2000. 2018, quite some time ago. Apple accelerates U.S. investment and job creation, $350 billion contribution to the U.S. economy over the next 5 years. And then here it talks about some specifics of what they're going to do, combining new investments in Apple's current pace of spending with domestic suppliers and manufacturers, an estimated $55 billion for 2018. Apple's direct contribution to the U.S. economy will be more than $350 billion over the next 5 years, not including Apple's ongoing tax payments, tax revenues generated from employees' wages, and the sale of Apple products. So already right there, we have a large part of this alleged $600 billion investment already accounted for years and years ago. But then, April 26, 2021, 3 years later, Apple commits $430 billion in U.S. investment over the next 5 years. The accelerated commitment will fund a new North Carolina campus and job-creating investments in innovative fields like silicone engineering and 5G technology. And then he goes on to talk about how it's going to create 20,000 jobs of more than $430 billion. And it says here that over the past 3 years, Apple's contributions to the U.S. have significantly outpaced the company's original 5-year goal of $350 billion set in 2018. Apple is now raising its level of commitment by 20% over the next 5 years. So this isn't a new $430 billion investment. This is the same $350 billion investment that they added $80 billion on top of 5 years later. For Apple, that's peanuts. That's basically nothing. And now we have this big new headline that Apple's put out on August, just yesterday. Apple increases U.S. commitment to $600 billion, announces All-American Manufacturing Program. And now you're starting to see the pattern here. Coming down here, they talk about Apple today announced a new $100 billion commitment to America, a significant acceleration of its U.S. investment that now totals $600 billion over the next few years. They're talking about the total amount that they have invested probably since that 2018 investment. They're saying, oh, over the next 4 years, we will have gotten a total of $600 billion. That's basically nothing. That'll be a total of $600 billion over an 11-year commitment. Here's a quote from Tim Cook. Again, they're being very careful about the language they're using. Today, we're proud to increase our investments across the United States to $600 billion over the next 4 years and launch our new American Manufacturing Program, Tim Cook, Apple CEO, said. This includes new and expanded work with 10 companies across America. Again, new and expanded work across 10 companies. So it's talking about, yes, some new investment absolutely is coming in, but it's also expanding previous investments that they've had since 2018. They produce components that are used in Apple products sold all over the world, and we're grateful to the president for his support. Apple is using every Hollywood accounting trick in the book to make it look like they're investing way more than they actually are. It's all just one big trust me, bro. And the commitments that they have made, they haven't even really followed through with. Look at this from the New York Times. Apple has a mixed record on fulfilling its investment promises. In 2018, the company pledged to invest $350 billion, that's the one we just looked at, in the United States. And Mr. Cook said it would build a new campus in a new state, but it has not yet done so. A year later, Mr. Cook toured a Texas factory with Mr. Trump that was built as a new manufacturing plant, but the plant had been making Apple computers since 2013, and the company has since shifted production from that facility to a facility in Thailand. Look, I want American manufacturing back just as much as the next guy, but Apple throws out promises left and right saying that they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and they're basically just saying whatever makes the current president happiest so they can keep their tax breaks and not get tariffed, but they have essentially no track record of keeping those promises. Because why would they? Purely from a business perspective, there's nobody holding them to that. There's no law, there's no legal agreement, there's no contract, there's nothing. There's just a number that's been thrown out there that may or may not represent anything, and it certainly does not represent reality. We have some people talking about this and how it's not all that it seems, so I want to give a listen to this TikTok.
I was hoping someone would comment this, but Apple committed $600 billion to America. That's massive no matter how you spin it. I'm gonna spin it. First of all, it's not just, hey America, here's $600 billion. This $600 billion is spread out through 2029, so like $120 billion a year, which is a lot, but for scale, Apple spent $90 billion on stock buybacks in 2024, basically just making their investors richer. Apple spends a lot of money. Apple can spend hundreds of billions of dollars. And
Apple is a multi-trillion-dollar company. $600 billion over the next 5 years is kind of nothing to them. At some point, this investment is really just the cost of doing business. This is the price tag of keeping tariffs off of Apple's products, and it's a tax that they're willing to pay.
And it's especially easy for Apple to spend $600 billion on America when they could spend that money on basically anything. There's no requirements. Like, oh, building that data center that we're already going to build, that counts as American manufacturing. Developing that phone that we're already going to develop, that counts as American manufacturing. A lot of the things that Apple was already going to do is going to be counted to this $600 billion. And as a matter of fact, I shouldn't say counts to the $600 billion because nobody's counting. This isn't enforced by anyone. This is just a pledge that Apple's making. And brands make a lot of pledges. But regardless of the scale, Apple is making investments in the US. That could be because of Trump, that could be because it's just a good move. But don't get too caught up in this $600 billion to America number, because Apple saying that they're investing billions of dollars into America is like me saying, I'm investing thousands of dollars a month into housing teenagers in LA. When in reality, I'm just paying my rent.
Apple is scared of tariffs. That's kind of the bottom line of it. They're scared of tariffs, and so they're willing to spend whatever amount of money it takes to avoid those tariffs. Think of it kind of as the same thing as lobbying. Companies, when they think a law will go through that harms their business, they will spend millions or possibly billions of dollars on lobbying to make sure that law doesn't happen. This is similar, but kind of adjacent. They're spending that same money that they would normally spend doing things like lobbying, and they're spending it on instead a different kind of lobbying, which is just bringing back some manufacturing to appease the government officials.
President Trump shared some kind words about that work, but he also asked us to think about what more we could commit to doing. And Mr. President, we took that challenge very seriously. I'm glad to be here with you today, and I'm very proud to say that today we're committing an additional $100 billion to the United States, bringing our total U.S. investment to $600 billion over the next 4 years. As a part of this, we're launching Apple's American Manufacturing Program. It will spur even more production right here in America for critical components used in Apple products all around the world. And we're thrilled to announce that we've already signed new agreements with 10 companies across America to do just that.
And that sounds good, but Apple is a company that will say literally anything for your own benefit. Apple is not your friend. Apple is not Trump's friend. Apple is only the friend of money. And to be fair, there is a reasonable argument that, well, I don't care how it's done. As long as we get manufacturing back to the United States, they can do whatever they want. As long as it happens, the outcome is the most important thing. And I agree that that could be the case. But you have to understand that manufacturing simply is not coming back to the United States. This is a graph of manufacturing since, since January of 2000 all the way to today. In January of 2000, we had about 17 million manufacturing jobs. And today, we have about 12.7 million. We've lost 5 million manufacturing jobs over the past 25 years. Manufacturing jobs are going away, and they are really not coming back. If we go back even farther, you can see at our peak, we're doing way, way better than we have recently. And it's just been a decline over the last many, many decades since the 1980s. I'm not saying it can't come back, but even if we were to get that 20,000 job number that Tim Cook talks about, it kind of wouldn't even register. When we've lost 5 million, 20,000 coming back is basically almost nothing. And that's only if we take Cook at his word, which is not something that I'm inclined to do. And I would bet money that Apple never pulls this off to the level that they keep promising that they're going to. Like the TikToker said, Apple could say anything and it's impossible to prove or disprove. Because what even counts as an investment? Is it the amount of taxes that you spent on federal taxes or local taxes or business taxes? Is it the salaries to your employee? Is it the cost of goods sold or goods purchased in order to make your iPhones? Is it stock buybacks? They did $90 billion of those. Do that count toward it? Is it executive pay packages? If Tim Cook is awarded $1 billion in Apple stock, does that count as $1 billion in investment? It could be anything. There's no definition, so they just get to make it up.
Just moments ago, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, stood in the Oval Office with Donald Trump and announced that Apple would be investing $100 billion in American manufacturing over the next 4 years. And look, this is in addition to the $500 billion that they recently pledged to invest in American manufacturing over the next 4 years. That means $600 billion that they're pledging to invest. This, frankly, is a huge win for Donald Trump and his tariff strategy, because remember, the whole strategy of his tariffs has been not only to bring in revenue, but more importantly even to bring back American manufacturing to the shores of the US. Over the years, that has increasingly gone overseas as the cost of labor is much cheaper and there's really deep and involved supply chains overseas. So experts have said it'd be really difficult to bring that back to the US. And yet, to see a company as valuable and as public as Apple saying, hey, we're going to start bringing some of those pieces of manufacturing back to the US in response to these tariffs and at the goading of the president is kind of a big win for him.
Except I don't think it actually is a win. I think it looks like a win. It sounds amazing to say $600 billion is going to be brought back to the United States and invested in U.S. manufacturing. It sounds amazing to say that you're going to be bringing back 20,000 manufacturing jobs that were shipped overseas to China. It sounds amazing both for Apple and also for Trump. But I'm not concerned with what they're saying it will be. My concern is what it will actually be. And Apple has a really bad track record. They've been promising this for basically the last 10 years, and they haven't delivered on anything. So I suspect what it will actually turn out to be is much, much less than whatever they say.
Well, Apple went to the White House today to tell the world it is ready to invest billions more in U.S. jobs and manufacturing. Our business and tech reporter Scott Budman is here with the details behind this giant commitment. Hey, Scott.
Well, hey, Gia, the announcement from Apple shows how much big companies, tech and otherwise, want to please President Trump and maybe avoid big tariffs along the way.
Yep.
Earlier this afternoon, Apple CEO Tim Cook met with the president. Then the two of them jointly announced Apple's plan to spend $100 billion to create jobs and manufacturing facilities here in America. The plan is to use those facilities, including some owned by other Silicon Valley companies, to build components for iPhones and Apple Watches. Not the full products, but parts. Take a listen as Tim Cook moved several tech stocks higher with one sentence today.
And the tech stocks went higher because now these companies know that they can negotiate with Trump. If they throw out a number, $100 billion, $600 billion, whatever it may be, then that means that they can avoid the tariffs that would specifically harm their companies. So this means that investors know that these companies are going to start lobbying Trump with, certain $1 billion of investments to try and keep these tariffs low. And that bodes really well for the concerns that it would be too expensive to import things and the cost of electronics would skyrocket.
This is for the first time ever. Every single new iPhone and every single new Apple Watch sold anywhere in the world will contain cover glass made in Kentucky. In addition to the American manufacturing program, we're also significantly growing our investments in AI.
All right, that AI part drove Apple stock higher by about $6 a share in after-hours trading. Another Bay Area company, Applied Materials, will also benefit from the deal. Applied also saw its shares jump tonight. Gia?
Okay, so we're talking stocks, we're talking billions of dollars, jobs. Scott, what did you make of everything that we heard?
I think what we heard is that Tim Cook is really determined to please the president and indeed make sure that at least part of the iPhones and Apple Watches are made here in America. It's not all that likely that we'll see the full phones. Tim Cook himself says we won't see a full iPhone made here, but at least the components will, and that's likely to create some jobs, tech jobs, here in America.
And that's because it simply would be too expensive to bring over the creation of the full iPhone from China to here. In China, they have all the machinery and the fine tuning and the technical knowledge to be able to build the iPhone. Because we've been building them over there for so long, there's not anyone in America who knows how to do it. And there aren't any factories or people that can put together the components like they can over there. If you ship all the knowledge over to China so that they build the iPhones, then of course people in America are going to forget how to do it, because why would they remember? They don't build iPhones here.
Okay, so if Apple starts making more products here, should we expect prices to go up?
It's a great question. My guess is they may go up a little bit, but only a little bit, and Apple can offset those costs. After all, it's putting $100 billion towards this effort, and one thing it doesn't want to do is sell fewer iPhones and scare people away. So if the prices go up because of this, again, it's only some components, it'll only go up a little bit, and that cost may even be absorbed by Apple.
All right, Scott Budman, thank you so much for breaking it all down.
And I can't imagine that they're going to raise the price of definitely not current iPhones, but even future iPhones very much. One, it's a pretty small component. It is just the glass. And two, Trump goes after anyone that raises prices. Like he went after Walmart, he went after Barbie, Mattel, and then there was some other companies he's gone after. Apple would not risk that negative PR. All this is a concession by Apple to prevent a much worse tariff situation that would kill off its stock price. Apple is still going to be almost entirely dependent on Chinese manufacturing. It's just really hoping that by giving up this small piece of that Chinese manufacturing over to the United States, that it will be able to avoid a much, much worse situation that would absolutely tank their stock price and valuation. But let's say, hypothetically, that this works. Apple invests the whole $600 billion that they say they're going to, and they create all 20,000 jobs that they say that they're going to create. That would be awesome, except that since April, the United States has lost 37,000 manufacturing jobs. The plan we have right now for saving American manufacturing is not working, not even a little bit. Over the next 4 years, Apple plans to try and offset the amount of jobs we've lost just since April by only half. We're putting all of our hope in a company that historically has lied, and I don't think that's going to help anyone. Thanks for watching.